Two of them, the biggest one being the political one, of course, being today this is a point we'll drill deeper with that with our panelists who are already here, where the National Super Alliance has done the right thing by putting on hold the ceremony to swear in Mr. Raila Odinga as people's president that was to coincide with the Jamhuri Day celebrations. NASA has genuine grievances they want addressed, and the Jubilee administration cannot simply bury its head in the sand. The country is at a crossroads, and all the political formations must address this. The question of electoral injustice stands out as a perennial problem the country must confront. Since the multi-party poll of 1992, every election cycle, with the exception of 2002, has been characterized by intractable disputes. The flare-up of 2007 mayhem was the ultimate show of how deep the disgruntlement had gone. This year, the country went through a bruising electioneering that left it polarized and fatigued. Embers are still smoldering, which is a reason we have consistently argued for a systematic approach to tackling these challenges. NASA's move must be reciprocated by Jubilee. President Uhuru Kenyatta has dismissed calls for national dialogue, and he's being insensitive and unwise. Any leader must listen to the wishes of the people. His administration suffers a legitimacy question, and he must be ready to listen. The political leaders should call for a cessation of hostilities and sit down to discuss the contentious issues and pave the way for national reconciliation. Of course, that's from the basis of our discussion this morning with our panelists who are already here in studio. We have with us Peter Kagwanja, who's Executive Director of Africa Policy Institute, Farah Maalim, who's the Deputy Leader of the Wiper Party and also the former Deputy Speaker of the 10th Parliament. Also, we do have with us Dr. Shem Ochuodho, Global Leader, Kenya Diaspora Alliance. Jeremiah Kioni, who is a Member of Parliament from Daragwa. Professor Anyang' Nyong'o has just sent a text. He's running a flu, so he cannot make it this morning. We'll miss him in the discussion this morning. So NASA on the horns of dilemma, which way to go? Why are they, of course, every other time shifting the goalposts? We want to know from our panelists this morning. And I will begin with Farah Maalim. First of all, Farah Maalim, I can begin with you because the Wiper Party seemed to be distancing itself from this particular swearing in. You've been also on record categorically saying that this is a recipe for disaster.
Yes, we have issues with the legitimacy of Uhuru Kenyatta. But legally, based on the same judiciary that we had heralded before, I have a problem myself coming to terms with a situation in which I can say that there's a room for us to swear somebody else outside the Constitution. That has been my position myself. I don't think we have given a comprehensive wiper position on that.
Yes.
And I did not pretend to speak for the party that time. That was my personal opinion. I know there are a number of people also in the party who share that kind of an opinion. But I think we need to deal with this thing in a different way. Not by swearing in somebody else. Because it's not right, to be honest with you, it's not right. I have a feeling that we can work within the Constitution and bring down this government, or rather get this government down on its own knees.
Yes.
To force them to make the changes that we want them to make, which is a need for there to be a comprehensive reform, which essentially is going to deal with elections in a different way, in which we can say never again. As you put it, the only free and fair election we've had in this country is the one that was conducted by the colonial government, and the other one was the one of 2002. We have never had any other free, fair, credible, and transparent election in this country. So the genuine concerns are there. We're not in disagreement on the genuine concerns, but the approach and the way to deal with that, and the way to secure the rights of Kenyans, to choose people of their own choice, or other leaders of their own choices, is something that I think we needed to have a very comprehensive deliberations on, and to come to an acceptable, not do things the way we're doing right now. I think we need to do it differently. I got a lot of flack from very many people saying, oh, he's typical nonsensical crap that you find always in Kenyan politics. He's a Jubilee mole, he's that mole, he's that, you know. I've never been anybody's mole all my political life. I'm the only person who can stand up there the only that I know in the old political class. I can tell you, when I say that, it involves everybody else. I've never gone into a corporation. I've never had any underhand dealings in politics anytime. I've always had my very, very independent way of looking at these things. And I was not party to the discussions and the deliberations on that, because I would have given my position very firmly and said, no, we can't go in this direction. And I'm in NASA. I'm not in Jubilee. I'm not seeking an appointment in Jubilee. For God's sake, I wouldn't want to serve in any cabinet anywhere. Because I also rejected to serve in the cabinet of 2007 or 2008. That's why I went to run for the deputy speaker. I was actually sent somebody, Balala. I don't want to talk about it, by our prime minister, the leader at that time, to settle for a cabinet position. I said no. I just want to go to this independent institution called Parliament, and take a leadership role in that, so that we can see how we can bring about the kind of reforms that we need in this country. I think we did a very good job in Parliament at that time. So the fact of the matter is that there has to be a certain decency and intellectual interactive discourse in the country in here, where people are not scared of giving their opinions on things.
Thank you.
Because the moment you give one opinion on one way or the other, you're either a Jubilee mole or you're a NASA mole.
All right.
It's a ridiculous claptrap which has got to come to some kind of an end in the country.
Or from your own estimation, then, you think this is an impossibility?
It's an impossibility, and it doesn't take us anywhere. In any case, let me tell you, I mean, from my own side, I would like to see NASA make some serious gains in terms of electoral reforms and the rest. Supposing we go and now swear our own president out there, and these people decide, yeah, that's a social, there's so many presidents, by the way, they're presidents of clubs, they're presidents of oil, anywhere else. And then they sit tight and don't even bother us with us, you know what I mean? And then we go and swear him in. So how different is this going to be from the one of Besigye, from the one of Shikedi,
Thank you,
from the one of all the ones that were there before?
All right, thank you.
And then the international recognition is there. I mean, it's the legality is there. The legitimacy is the issue that we need to deal with.
Thank you. Let's hear from Honorable Jeremiah Kioni. You think NASA's cookie is beginning to crumble? Because if you have these factions of Wiper not really agreeing with this particular swearing in, they're saying that this is an impossibility, this is a recipe for, of course, chaos. Is a house made of cards now any time about to actually crumble?
Thank you, Debarl. Let me first say that I'm a product of the electoral system that is there and as provided for in our constitution. And we sat through it for many hours, many days, many months. And I'm in Parliament because the people of Daragwa made that choice using the electoral system that is available or availed to us by the Constitution. And I do not think that there is any of us who suffers from any out of legitimacy or illegitimacy, as Mheshimiwa Farah would want to put it. As to whether, the other thing is that NASA has done the same thing. That is the same thing they have done to do away with that thought of swearing in a person into an office that does not exist. And I agree that what they need to do is to look for something or to chart a way forward, because we need them. We need a side that keeps the government in check. The fact that we have Wiper saying that they don't support the swearing in, and there is another function within NASA saying the other one, to me it doesn't mean that they will crumble. And in the case, we do not want them to crumble. But we want them to use a path that will be useful to this country. The Constitution talks of minority and majority leader, and the reason is because ideas can come from even every quarter. And the ideas are good for this nation for as long as they help us improve our lives. And I think that's the line they should be encouraged to follow. It's not easy, Debarl. When you lose, it's painful. When you lose, it's very costly. And it's at times very difficult to come to terms with it. And also when the years are winning. So I think we just have to encourage them to continue looking for something that keeps them relevant. We need a competitive environment come 2022. And if there are issues that needs to be put on the table, the president himself said that he is ready and willing to take on board ideas that would have helped the country. And I believe that is the way to go. But I don't think the fact that they have differing opinions should get them to crumble. And I want to repeat it again. It is not in the interest of the democracy in this country to see NASA crumble. But I think also it's not necessary for us, after every electoral process, for us to start redefining what is democracy, coming up with the terms that I think are tired and need to be retired, of electoral justice, electoral reforms. We've gone through it. The fact that an electoral process does not produce you as a leader doesn't make it bad.
All right. Okay, let's hear from Dr. Shem Ochuodho before we come to Peter Kagwanja, first of all. You know, the president also has made a full circle right now, so to speak. He says that he's not ready for any dialogue on electoral reforms. And it's that dialogue notion should wait until 2022 when his deputy president, William Ruto, will be running for president. So where are we at? Are we going to see any happy medium between NASA and, of course, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta? If Uhuru Kenyatta has made it very categorical, there's no dialogue at all. So on electoral reforms, we are going full steam ahead. You wait until 2022. So here we're left stranded. International community is calling for dialogue. The church and the laity and, of course, the diplomatic mission is calling also for dialogue as well. President Uhuru Kenyatta has drawn his line on the sand.
Debarl, allow me before I make a comment to eulogize with the family of Francis Nyenze. We worked very closely in the 8th Parliament when he was Environment Minister. He was one of the few very reasonable and balanced KANU ministers that would reach out to the opposition. May the good Lord rest his soul in peace. Same to the parents of Mheshimiwa Sabina Chege and the young man who died because of betting at the coast. In terms of NASA calling off the swearing in, again, my position on this has been very clear. I didn't quite understand in what context the Right Honorable former Prime Minister was going to be sworn in because the Constitution doesn't provide for that at all. I think it's a good thing that it's been called off. It helps ease the temperatures. We have a diaspora conference, and I do know some of the members who are reluctant to come over, thinking that there would be a problem. So, and the investors also, I'm sure there are those who are waiting to see. So it's good that they have called it off. But having said that, yes, I'm yet to understand what the Excellency President meant when he said he's not ready for dialogue, because it's the other day he was saying he was ready to dialogue once the court processes were done. But I would want to take it that that's now politics. Sometimes when the opponent hardens their position, you're compelled to do the same. But I'm hoping and praying that that's not what the president means, because he can't say he's not ready for dialogue. I think it's vital that our leaders come down and realize that it's at the service of the people. And I want to particularly take this up with not so much the president or deputy, but I've seen other leaders in government. You know, they behave like they're little gods. They forget that it's these Kenyans who put them in power, the Lord over them. I'm reminded of I think it was 96, when Mozambique invited me as a keynote speaker at a National Computer Convention, and the then Prime Minister was the chief guest. The humility was very humbling. I realized he sat through the event, after he opened the event, he sat through. Even when we were going for lunch, he was there with us, and I was saying, well, this is very unusual, because for us in Kenya, even getting a permanent secretary is a big thing to have to be in an event. Here was a prime minister. Even in the evening, when he was now leaving, the former vice chancellor or vice rector of the University of Walter Mondlane in Maputo, that was the host. As we were escorting the prime minister to his car, he just bids him at the door, bye. I was telling him, no, we must take him to the car. He said, no, I can call this guy at night when I want. And I was saying, are we really in the same Africa or different? I also saw something similar in around 1995 when the president, Feroki, of Eritrea had just come to power. Very humbling experiences. Of course, he has changed over time. I can't wait for the day that Kenya can also have those leaders that realize, no, you're not little, you're not people's bosses. Again, as I said, this is more for, I've seen a number of cabinet secretaries and other leaders who really treat Kenyans with disdain. It's not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. All right, but you have not really answered my question on the President Uhuru Kenyatta, making it quite clear that he's not ready for any dialogue on the electoral reforms. So
I thought I said,
yes.
I said that I'm hoping that that's not what the president means, because really, as a democratically elected leader, you can't say you can't dialogue. Not even if it was not the former prime minister. He's his citizen, he's his subject. So you really can't say you can't dialogue. I think what would be in contention is what's the agenda on the table that's being talked about. But again, it's not me to talk for the president. Maybe Professor Kagwanja here can.
All right, Kagwanja, first of all, I want to draw your attention to the piece that you just wrote on Sunday. Raila's post-poll power push, a litmus test for Uhuru's legacy. And, well, I think it was very telling, because you say that you have 3 planks that actually you're addressing this particular scenario that we have, where Raila Odinga is very categorical. They have been categorical that they're not going full steam ahead with tomorrow's swearing in. First of all, you say that the first plank is the Luo Nyanza fortress itself. It's a throwback from the resistance of Raila's father Jaramogi Oginga between 1966 and 1989. What do you mean by that?
Debarl, let me thank you for inviting me to this forum and to join my brother Ochuodho in basically condoling with our colleagues Nyenze and Sabina. But also to use that to simply say that I think the psychology, the political psychology of what we have gone through in the last 123 days has not been understood fully. And it's in our culture. I'm reminded of Aru saying that you don't start negotiating or discussing funeral arrangements when somebody has just gone through bereavement. You let them cool down. Raila Odinga has lost a total of 5 elections, 4 straight, 1 boycott. That is not a mean, for a political actor, for a political person, it is not a mean loss. It's a major loss. And therefore, we needed to treat it with caution. And I think there was a lot of goading from his side, do this, do that. And he has been a victim himself of those goading, particularly by a cabal of political actors that I'm aware of, who would like to heighten the militancy. But of course, as I have argued in that particular case, yes, the concept of resistance is not new to Nyanza, particularly Nyanza. And if you just need to read Not Yet Uhuru and see when the resistance started and what form it took. What is new in this resistance by Raila is the weaponization or the turning of one community into a weapon, throwing it into the streets. And therefore, the whole picture, and that's what I argued in my article, the whole aim is basically to create victims of genocide, to give wings to a new campaign of, profiling and, victimization and all that of Ruo. Again, flowing from the boycott of election. And therefore, you're creating a very powerful narrative. And globally, international law, international human rights law, you just need 100 people killed or less to claim that there's a genocide. As long as you can prove that they are all Ruos and they are all from the same community, not just Ruos alone, from one community, then the concept of targeting comes in. That has been very willing to me, which is why I penned that article. Just to let the Kenyans know that you have a trap here. Don't take this issue of Raila swearing as just a power push by Raila. It has more risks. And that's why I was talking about Kenyatta's legacy.
So you think this is a very systematic approach to try and create a sort of chaos where blood will be shed, and then now we have people now claiming that, yes, you know, we're trying to fight for justice and blood has been shed. So you think this is very systematic?
Yes, because after the election, the August election, you saw that happen until pressure was put. And of course, the reports of the election monitors showed this, and therefore, you know, Nasa or Raila himself was supposed to go to the court, Supreme Court, to seek justice for what they are now calling electoral justice. Electoral justice can be addressed, and you have seen that within our court system.
Right, but the other Monday you were just here actually, you know, raising accusative fingers to the media and saying that, Father, we have some very telling headlines that we actually expose or put on a splash here, of course, on our headlines every day as media, and we are being irresponsible. Don't you think then it is injudicious of you to actually, at this time, to come up with such a piece, which is bound to be very controversial?
No, I was warning Kenyans, and I'll do that again and again, that I'll warn Kenyans as follows. I warned them on three, not Kenyans alone, even President Kenyatta himself. I said, I told his officers, if Odinga make good his threat that is going to be sworn, act with caution, because if so many people lose their lives in whichever circumstances, it is going to play into a narrative that is being built. That's not threatening. Let me say what I think is a problem with the oath, because I think that's the most important thing. A constitution that creates a cul-de-sac that does not enable people to make changes that they want to make itself is a danger to a civilization. And that is not the case of our own constitution. The problem we have is that NASA, or let's say ODM, I prefer to use ODM. I understand politics very well. This is not about NASA, it's about ODM. ODM has chosen a very distinct path. And it has a name in law and has a name in politics. It is called extra-legal activism. And extra-legal activism basically deviates from the law in order to subvert or undermine existing system. Now, in this particular case, this is not to say that NASA has no grievances or ODM has no grievances. It is not also to say that the grievances are not legitimate. It is also not to say that they should not air their grievances in public, because that's why we have a democracy. But they are laid out channel. For example, we have Mheshimiwa Kioni here, and he has more colleagues. In that parliament, which is the voice of the people after the election, according to the Constitution, there is no other forum or voice of the people that interprets the sovereign, but the parliament, collectively a Senate and National Assembly. If Senate and in the National Assembly meet and decide that Uhuru Kenyatta must talk to Raila Odinga and come with a bill on the talk, President Kenyatta cannot say no. He's bound by law to sit down and talk. That bill would define, I imagine, what issues would be discussed and with what end. And this is not new. There was a similar move when there were protests. There are anti-IEB protests. And that reformed the IEBC. So to finish, let me say the following. The crisis we have and we need to address is that crisis of extralegal action by any individual which undermines the law. Not just NASA or ODM, but any Kenyan who use that path because that's threat. Let me also finish this and say we need reforms. And this one we have indicated from the beginning.
Right, we have all stock of time to actually talk about this. We need to take a short break right now, and we'll circle back with that. But we want also to know, is it too early maybe to be preemptive with your piece? And of course, act as a judge, jury, and hangman before that particular swearing in is done, because we don't know how the outcome of that swearing in will be. So Peter Kagwanja will tell us if truly his piece, he thinks, is a bit preemptive of what will happen before then. Him saying that they're actually putting forth an extra legal means. They've said, of course, all that is domiciled in the Constitution. We're here to find out with our panelists here. Don't go away. Much more coming up on the other side of a break. You're watching This Is Point. Welcome back. You're watching This Is a Point. And this morning I'm holding court with Farah Maalim, who is the Deputy Leader of Wiper Party, also the former Deputy Speaker of the 10th Parliament. Also, we do have with us Jeremiah Kioni, who is a Member of Parliament from Daragwa. We have with us Peter Kagwanja, who is Executive Director of Africa Policy Institute. Also, we do have with us Dr. Shem Ochuodho, who is a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance. We continue with the discussion as a pace, of course, looking at NASA. Where is it at? Is it on the horns of dilemma as far as the swearing in is concerned? Also, is it, yes, a coalition that is awaiting to crumble, right, because of maybe people not really seeing eye to eye as far as the swearing in is concerned? Wiper, they've made it categorical, and Farah Maalim has said this is not the position of Wiper, actually it is his position. And of course we've had the chairman also of the deputy chair of Wiper Party, Mutula Kilonzo, saying this also is an impossibility, the swearing in of Raila Odinga. So before we took a short break, of course, we're looking intently on what you've written, or you wrote yesterday in the Daily Nation. But the question that maybe I posed to Dr. Shem Ochuodho, and is a question I'll also pose to Farah Maalim. If President Uhuru Kenyatta has actually drawn a line in the sand and saying there's no dialogue, and I can see someone saying he has not said that there's no dialogue, but the dialogue on electoral reforms, that one is not allowing, but anything to do with development, that one is, of course, a thumbs up for President Uhuru Kenyatta. Where do we stand?
But the dispute is in elections.
The dispute is in elections.
The dispute is in elections more than anything else. Mm-hmm. I think whether it's because of politicians sometimes talk these things without really thinking through it, but I think that was not a high point on the part of the president. Mm-hmm. Clearly, a very low point, coming straight away from this kind of a conflict and just being sworn in.
Yes.
And then you say, I cannot have any dialogue, let them have it later on with Ruto. Mm-hmm. is an assumption that this thing belongs to them. And look, I want to have mine easy. You can have it with the other person who is going to come after me.
Yes.
But that is not how democracy is supposed to work. Where does it come to this conclusion, first of all, to say that they could have their strategies, undoubtedly, but this is not it's not a succession. It's a process that essentially is constitutional, and people will come in, and you see already the presumption is that deal with the next president, and the next president is Ruto. I'm not going to deal with these things. No, this is not the way Kenya is going to be taken forward. And I think these are the kind of things that initially Raila, with the insistence on swearing in and the rest of it, Uhuru was looking like the sober guy. And then immediately you can see how power gets into his head immediately again, within a matter of days. That you deal with my successor, don't bother me with these things. No, this is not a private property. It's not a corporate issue. This is a nation, and that belongs to all of us. So there is a problem. The problem has been there for a very long time. It's a very costly problem. It has to be fixed. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing better than an outgoing president fixing that kind of a problem. Because you never know. You never know. We have got a raft of what do you call similar situations in which somebody was brought in on the presumption that we are friends, we are buddies, and when the other person comes into power, he deals with you in a different way. So who knows, how does Uhuru know that he's a very young man still, and I want to believe that he has many, many years ahead of him. As a retired president, when this other president comes in, does he think that he's going to be happy with everything he does? You think that camaraderie and friendship is going to last that long? No. It could go down again. Where Moi came to power as Nyayo, basically following the footsteps of the late Kenyatta. And within a number of years, the community that was complaining most was the Central Mountain Region community, which was saying we're being marginalized systematically by the same person who was ushered in by our own. So it's always, when you want to talk about a law, assume that law being in the hands of your worst enemy. Can you be comfortable with it? A system, just imagine for a moment that system being in the hands of your worst enemy. Can you be comfortable with it? If you're not comfortable with that, then change it. Let there be something that you can be comfortable with. So that is where the problem is, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. Isn't this also maybe a banded solution that we have here from President Uhuru Kenyatta? Shoving all these issues now to Deputy President William Ruto to 2022, that will still have the same cycle that we want to actually get over and done with. So we don't want to just put it on the shelf, then we pick it up in 2022. Then we have the same shenanigans, we have the same cycle, we have the same fatigue, and being taken, to and fro because of two people, because of two coalitions. That is Jubilee and NASA. Why can't we deal with it once and for all?
I'm one person who believes that we will never deal with it. Because every time we have an election, there will always be an issue that is raised. For as long as I am not in office, I will have a bunch of or a set of things that I can bring to the table and say they need to be dealt with. And Debarl, that is why we have the judiciary. So that if there are issues that you think you are uncomfortable with, you need to take them to the judiciary. And we have done that. If there are reforms, and you can see we are interchanging words here, or terminologies, or we talk of electoral reforms, and then we talk of electoral justice. So you really can't quite tell what it is that NASA would want to put on the table. And I believe that if there are electoral reforms that needs to be put on the table, again, the Constitution gives us the roadmap. How do you deal with them? I want to agree with what the president said. He has a legacy to leave behind, and certainly even political legacy. But the thing is that if he allows himself to go back to dialoguing tables, he will never be able to implement his development agenda. And he's saying that he's not going to dialogue on election, on electoral justice, electoral reforms, whatever it is that wants to be put on. And I think they are talking of electoral justice more than electoral reforms. And one would have to be very careful with the way electoral justice is defined, because we seem to want to define it differently from the way we have already defined it in the Constitution. But I don't want to preempt it. I would wait to see what it is that NASA calls electoral justice. But I think, and as Professor has alluded to, if there are reforms, if there is a process that NASA wants to put on the table, there is already a way to do it. We are in Parliament. If there are specific things that they would want us to agree, negotiate, because we have to continue agreeing on this, let them be put on the table. If they are thrown out outrightly, then you can start saying that this is a dictatorial system. But I think we have to be very careful, because NASA, theirs is how do they now prepare for 2022. Jubilee is how do they implement the manifesto. And those are two competing things. So I believe NASA would want to distract us as much as we can, and we must be careful not to fall to that trap. Because for them to remain relevant, that is the only route that they can remain relevant, politicking. For Jubilee to remain relevant, they must deliver on what they promised Kenyans. And I want to agree again, we are in Parliament. If we want to redefine things, let us see. We are there, we will talk about it, and eventually see what we come out with. But the issue of trying to say that you can organize a swearing in, or even having it in your mind, is really something you are just looking for chaos in this country. And perhaps for the reasons that others may have said so. For this reason, if you say that our Constitution provides for a people's president, this Constitution, we start making it together with even Mheshimiwa James Olengo at Naivasha. We must have been a bunch of crazy guys who would make a Constitution that gives a country two presidents at the same time. Even Otiede Amora, I saw him sitting here the other day as he was reading articles in the Constitution that allow a second president in the country. I mean, that's ridiculous. We can't go that way. There must be some sane way, and it is there in the Constitution.
All right. So Peter Kagwanja says that now fighting under the new banner of electoral injustice, Odinga's endgame is to force talks among equals, with Kenyatta leading to a caretaker government and fresh elections presided over by a reformed electoral commission.
Can I just add something before you move to? This is the other thing. If you want to come and talk with me, if you want us to negotiate on something, and you are calling me illegitimate, I mean, it makes it very difficult for me to come to your table. There must be mutual respect. when you keep saying this is a illegitimate president and you want to dialogue with it, I mean, it doesn't add up. You cannot come to me with all those sets of insult. And even if the president was to agree to it, again, there must be the things that he must agree to deal with. Elections are in 2022. We cannot start talking of elections now. They will be concluded today with a judgment that is going to be delivered, whichever way we want to see the reasons, so that we can use those reasons to improve the electoral process in this country, if there is any improvement that it needs.
All right, I just want Dr. Shem Ochuodho to weigh in on that, that particular piece. Do you think that electoral injustice is Odinga's endgame to force talks among the equals, and of course to look forward for a caretaker government?
Debarl, allow me to talk to my community, the Luos. I think it's time that my community starts realizing that a country is not built by propaganda. And I would want to believe that what NASA is doing, or ODM, as Professor here is saying correctly so, is managing expectations. I find it very difficult that even in their own heart of hearts, NASA and its leadership believed they were going to be swearing in people's president, whatever that meant. But our people have been taken for a ride for a long time, probably 60 years. Oh, we are training guerrillas in Libya to come and take over government. Oh, on July 7th, with Obama's help, we are coming to take power. Oh, the army is divided. There is going to be trouble this day or that day. I think it's high time that my community realized that this must come to an end. But that's not to say my community doesn't have legitimate concerns that have to be addressed. I agree with some of what my colleagues are saying, but I don't agree with others. I'm certain that at one point these issues are going to be addressed. What I do not know of is whether they'll happen in 100 years, or 10 years, or 10 days, or when. That I don't know. But for sure, these injustices must be one way or the other addressed. How they are addressed are another issue. Having again said that, I agree with Honorable Kioni in terms of different interpretations in terms of electoral injustice or justice. When my good brother speaker says 202 was the fairest, was the only free and fair election, personally as a candidate in 202 who won and then ODM nomination and enjoying celebrating with my supporters in Homa Bay town, at midnight it's read on TV that Ochuodho has been disqualified. I mean, if Mheshimiwa Farah still calls that electoral justice, I really then don't know what electoral justice. My point here is that ODM has got this skewed idea, and I hope it doesn't spread to NASA, that, you know, electoral injustice is only in tallying of results. But the primaries, you can bungle them as much as you want, that is still justice. The electoral justice can only be free and fair and justice when it's the whole cycle from end to end. So the entire chain has to be free and fair. And let me just mention that a group that I belong to, and diaspora, a large section of diaspora belong to Tushauriane wa Kenya. There will be a retreat from Thursday in Manzoni, multi-sectoral, religious leaders, private sector, and other sectors as well. And the main point is there is a proposal to have a national conversation early sometime next year. And this is not just about Jubilee and NASA. I think it's high time that we do recognize that Kenya is bigger than that. We need to have a conversation, and I believe it's going to happen. And I say this with confidence, having perhaps been involved in 202, when KANU had grandstanding and was saying, oh, this will never happen, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, it happened. Kenya is bleeding. Half of the country is bleeding, and bleeding badly. And for me, in our case as Tushauriane, electoral justice is one of the 5 points we are putting forward. But the last one, it's not, I don't take the position that electoral injustice or justice is Kenya's biggest problem. The Kenya's biggest problem, we take the position, is exclusion and inequalities. So that's the issue that we must find a way to address, but in an environment that's conducive for its being addressed, but also within the premises of the Constitution.
Okay. Just a moment. Let's hear from Peter Kagwanja. We'll come to you. Yeah, I want you to comment on the electoral justice.
On the electoral
because,
justice.
Because we were wondering what electoral justice are we talking about and what electoral reforms are we talking about? Can we uncouple these two?
Debarl, let me make 3 good points which will help answer that question in a good way. First, I think Kenyans, particularly our colleagues in ODM, are trapped in a conceptual maze, and they need to get out of it. We started off with peace building after 2007, and that brings us out a sort of tool, a set of tools to deal with issues. Among them, dialogue. Among them, caretaker governments. Among them, an agenda for reforms. And we have gone through that. And Kofi Annan has published a book called Out of the Brink. Okay? It is there. You can read the sets of the stages that you need to go to get out. Thabo Mbeki and Nelson Mandela are hailed as champions of how to get countries out of those kind of peace-building situations. They all culminate in 2 things. One, a new constitution and a democratic election. We went through that in 2010 and 2013. Now, what we have is a society that is governed by democratic competition, election competition. We all admit that that's a very painful process, particularly for the losers. And for the winners, it requires humility and a lot of understanding that losses are not easy. So they are nurtured in a certain way. That's what we have in America. Therefore, for somebody to talk about going back to negotiate or dialogue in the way we did in 2007, 2008 is basically taking the country back. That's one point I wanted to make. The second point is about electoral justice. For the next 1,000 years, and possibly beyond, we are going to talk about electoral injustice. I mean, there is electoral injustice that everybody in the world knows. Trump lost to Hillary Clinton by 3 million votes in America. It is there, and the Americans are still counting. The counting is not over, but as per yesterday, it was over 3 million votes that Hillary Clinton had, and Trump had less than that. Yet, Trump is the president of the republic, and nobody is talking about an illegitimate president in the office. Because as long as you are sworn by the oath of the nation, irrespective of who you are the legitimate leader of that nation. Electoral injustice will always be there, but has to be addressed in the right path. Extralegal mechanisms or measures or advocacy can never be one of those solutions in a democratic setting. It can be in the conflict situation. We need to talk electoral injustice for Wanjiko and others, because for a country like Kenya that requires development, good hospitals, good education, good food for our children, for those who have, and food for those who don't have. How did we arrive at a situation where we are the most expensive election in the world? Estimated at $25 per voter. $25 per voter is equivalent to about 2,500 Kenya shillings per vote. At what level did it come that we have to print all our cards, our voters' papers and others outside the country, when we have more printers in this country than in any other country in Africa, perhaps except South Africa? How did we get to that level that we cannot trust ourselves to print our own things, that we are hemorrhaging our own economy? We need to talk about electoral justice that hemorrhages our economy, that undermines our livelihoods, and that undermines the good of our country. That's one. That's from my perspective, that would be.
And those the probing questions that NASA has been asking. You know, with the reducible minimums, especially on the electoral reforms.
Not
right?
really.
Yes.
NASA's discourse or narrative is that of a loss, that it lost unfairly, and it has no.
But where have they been picking also all their queries from? Isn't that from the electoral reforms they're talking about? Because those are the issues you're raising, and these are the questions.
The issue is, if you take election, the election management as an issue, election management. It is the most inframing issues. You can make, it's like witchcraft. You can accuse anybody of it. And when you have been accused, you are forced by that nature of accusation to say no or yes. Or you can never say yes, you say no. So electoral injustice is as old as the hills, and it is not going anywhere. The question is, how do you address it without going to the streets or using extralegal means? Now, one is saying you have to differentiate electoral injustice from an electoral loss. If an individual loses an election, you as an individual has a way. If Mheshimiwa Kioni here might be facing a petition, and he would face it. Another one would facing a petition. There are ways within the law of addressing electoral injustice.
Thank you. Let's hear from Farah Maalim.
You see, it's not a very complicated thing. The NASA is calling for electoral reforms to seal all the loopholes that facilitate electoral injustice. We're trying to cure. The malady or the disease is injustice, electoral injustice. So you need those reforms so that you can seal those loopholes. I think we will have to, there has to be a very exhaustive intellectual engagement on how we're going to operate as a nation and how we live with one another. Because like I said, he did not dispute the fact that the only post-independence free and fair election we've had is the one of 2002.
He did.
He did.
He disputed it only to just a second. He disputed it only to the extent that at the national level, the way it was conducted was not the same way it was conducted at the community level or at the regional level, at the constituency level. That is where he has been rigged out himself, and that happens a lot. That happens at every supremo, every big person from every community in the country, and this is something that needs to be dealt with. And so that we
put a fact on this.
Can I just finish?
Let him finish.
Can I just finish? Yeah. There is no way. You see, we have a saying in our own language that, we're talking to one another, which means we don't have people who are coming from us, which we are talking to. We live day to day. So we can't try and talk a lot of falsehood in here. Kioni can never become a member of parliament if he doesn't have, at least he does not have the blessings of Uhuru Kenyatta. And Uhuru tells him, now you people can choose between Kioni and the others. The day when he tried to oppose him, he would never get even an MCA back at home. Okay. There is no way anybody who opposes, and let them prove right now that they can oppose Uhuru and still be relevant in their own backyards. It's not possible. The same thing also with Raila Odinga and the look.
Speak for ourselves.
Just a moment. The same thing also with Raila Odinga and Luo Nyanza. It also happened. I think those are the two very dominant areas when it comes to side things. In the case of even Kalonzo Musyoka, there seems to be a fair amount of independence on the part of the electorate up there. They choose occasionally somebody of their own choice if this person they feel is imposed on them in Cumberland. In my case, it doesn't make a difference. You can go as independent. You can take the ABC party in there. There are other dynamics. There are clans and sub-clans and other dynamics, and the qualities of the individual himself or herself. Those are the things that matter on the ground. But let me tell you something. And I understand, and I sympathize with many who are in the shoes of Ochuodho, and many who are in the shoes of Kioni and my good old friend Alex Brady. Is the current governor for Laikipia.
It's not Alex.
It was Nderitu Mreithi, sorry.
I don't know which shoes these are.
Nderitu Mreithi, who was a very close friend of mine, and is a brilliant, former international civil servant with the World Bank and others, and has a fine mind. But when he did not toe the line with Uhuru, he was thrown out into the the people committed threw him out, and that happens everywhere. Nobody in the central province can go out there and say that I don't support Uhuru for the presidency or mountain region and hope to come back as a member of parliament. I mean, that is an issue that basically we need to see how to demystify it so that we can unify this country. And the same goes also for my brother Ochuodho. But now, having said that, Then, of course, we have a situation in the country in which gravitations and coming together is communities trying to come together, regions trying to come together so that they can corner power. Now, even if we solve this problem right now, the electoral injustice we are talking about, and we end up with the right people, or rather, some people who can come together as a majority winning the elections, it still is going to be the despotism or dictatorship or the tyranny of the majority, as you put it. That majority will still, nobody has a right to subjugate a section of the society because they have come together and said, let's capture power. And that narrative of let's capture power, which is the discourse in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa since independence.
Yes.
Since independence, since decolonization, is something we need to deal with and see how we can demystify that one. But what I'm saying is that, yes, electoral injustice is there, and electoral reforms is what is basically supposed to go and resolve that or cure that problem.
Right.
One is that as you are drawing us the attention of Professor Kagwanja's article on Saturday Nation, I think it is also telling that we also look at the article done by George Kigoro.
Let's just finish.
Before we get to that, but it helps us.
So
Yes, yeah, but already,
we are not everywhere.
Don't again take away the oxygen by, you know. let me just say what I wanted to say. You have this. You give us all these papers so that we can look at them. Otherwise, you should keep them away. But the thing is that it talks about what it is that we are talking about. We have been trying to define what electoral reforms is, what electoral justice is, and I now can see the other word that has been put, two more, electoral management and electoral laws. And I think we are confusing the whole of electoral laws with all these other terminologies. And Kigoro seems to have brought it out here very well. He says, for now,
reading?
The article.
Wait, what paragraph?
Oh, I'm leading, I don't know what paragraph. The third column.
The third column.
Yes.
Okay. For now, yes, I can see.
Yes, for now, and in the foreseeable future, a person has to be in Jubilee to be president, and no amount of political effort seems sufficient to change this fact. If this is the case, there is no benefit in maintaining an opposition, since such an outfit has no chances of accessing political power. And it continues. And if you read that bit, it tells you what it is that, why is it that we cannot have something on the table from NASA. And this is what I've been saying for a while. It will be useful for NASA to concentrate on how they can wrestle power from Jubilee. And to stop confusing issues with the fact that it is looking difficult to wrestle power from Jubilee in the foreseeable future with terms like electoral reforms, electoral justice. If we want to reform our electoral process for purposes of producing a given person in leadership position, that's not electoral reforms. It's not electoral justice. It's just we are dealing with electoral laws now and in the foreseeable future. So, and I think that is very crucial. And I can see Farah here trying to recreate himself. He's taking a very strong position against the swearing in. Don't think it is informed by anything else. It's informed by the same thing he was talking about here. That those of us who are in central Kenya must toe the line of Uhuru to come to. He's looking for a way out because he has
political survival.
And he has led Kigoro's article very well. You can see in the foreseeable future he is not likely to survive. And you are welcome.
Farah, he's been changing tone.
No, can I explain?
Just allow me to finish. I
haven't read it.
I didn't interrupt you. Allow me to finish. You talked a lot about me. So allow me to talk about you now. And bear the pain just like you have to bear with the electoral laws. And I want to say this. And with the Chairman White, Farah has talked about the fact that we have to be in Jubilee to win, you have to back Uhuru Kenyatta to win, and I want to tell you.
And the same goes also for the other side.
Yes, from where we come from, I have no reason to go against Uhuru. The direction he's leading us in the areas that we come from is the direction we like, and we're happy about it, and we're going to support him to the hilt.
All the MPs from Luland also say the same.
This is the bit. Now you're going to call it debate reforms or debate justice. Allow me to just finish. These are things that you see happening. And one of the things that I want to say here, and for the record, I don't like using that term because everybody uses it for the wrong reason. But let me say this. We are elected by people to represent them in different positions now in Parliament. The thing I fear most is to ever find myself and the people who have voted for me and those in our community who has faith in me in the same position Raila has with his community. Mm-hmm. It is the most painful place. And he has done it for 60 years in the family. They've taken a community to a point where now they don't know how to get out of it. And to get out of it, they come up with these extrajudicial things. And he's tried to say it. But it's the most painful thing. And I want to say this also that Farah does not struggle with it again. For as long as Uhuru is taking us in the route that is taking us from the region we come with, we are happy with it. We will support him to the last man.
Can I have
the last man?
Can I have the right to reply?
And again, I want to say this.
Just a reply.
We cannot allow ourselves, when we think we are drifting towards where Raila has taken his people, we will not be there.
When did he
That
say
is very important.
Dr. Shem Ochuodho.
So that
Debarl-
it stops.
Yeah, Debarl, right of reply.
Okay, right of reply. Can I just give him a minute? Just a minute. Just a minute. A minute. I'm counting.
Then I will also have a right of reply.
Yeah, no. You see, I do understand. He got into that realization, which is a perfect reason. I have no problem with that realization that Uhuru has led your people in the best possible way. But when did you see the light? I just thought a few years ago, in the last election, you felt Mudavadi. Just a moment. Just a moment.
Okay, give me.
By the way, if you
let me finish.
Just let him finish.
Mudavadi isn't
Let me finish,
getting
please.
it the wrong way.
Let me finish,
This is
please.
not the Mudavadi I knew 2013.
Let me just finish.
Okay, let him finish. He's got a minute.
Let me just finish. And then just the other day you were with Mudavadi, and then of course you went into the cold, and then you realized you better come out. The only way to come out of the cold is to toe this line. Now, come to me. I am somebody who has been against the mainstream establishment position of northern Kenya in all my political life. The first time I came into parliament, I was in Fort Kenya, and everybody else was in Kanu.
And you're in the code.
Hang on a minute. No, I was not in the court. I won an election on that. I won another time also an election, the same thing.
Okay.
The point I'm trying to tell you is that, look, for me, and this, you know it as well as I do, and you know it, everybody knows. You've all been in parliament together except Kagwanja, and Ochuodho knows. There are very few who have done what I've done. I know it's difficult. You can't. You suffer a lot, and even when you win with a lot of efforts, and it's not an easy thing to basically be against the system of the day that time.
Thank you.
And still, yes. So, but basically, we want to get to that day.
Thank you.
That day in Kenya is the only day that is going to have that homogeneity. And then we will have a political culture that essentially people can only go for ideals. You can associate with anybody.
That day, which is a holy grail for Kenya.
The Holy Grail, you are right. I agree with you.
Let's hear from
I agree
Dr.
with
Shem
you.
Ochuodho.
It's fair that I defend my good friend as well, Governor of Laikipia, Excellency Nderitu Murithi. I think it's true that it's true. Just Mheshimiwa Farah, just calm down. It's true. I think he lost or was rigged. I'm careful to use whether losing or being rigged in the primaries, but he still went ahead and won. He's today the governor of Laikipia. I think last week we were sitting right here was Honorable Shabir from Kisumu East Town. I think he was also mishandled in the party primaries in ODM. He still went to another party and won. So although what Mheshimiwa Farah is saying has got some merit, it's not totally true. My second point is that even if it was true that you can't be elected in Central without backing President Uhuru, or you can't be elected in Nyanza without backing Raila, we must ask ourselves, is it right or not?
Is it true?
And Please, Mheshimiwa Farah, just calm down a little. We must ask, is this right or not? You know, there are some of us, and I was hoping that Mheshimiwa Farah would walk that narrow path. And sooner or later, I hope he joins us in this third paradigm of people who stand for certain principles, whether you're in parliament or not. I have no regret whatsoever. I still believe even today in a free and fair election, I would win my Homa Bay seat. And probably this is why that various forces conspired to block me from running for Homa Bay Senate in this last election. So the point is, the fact that it's what's happening does not mean it's right. I believe it's wrong. The issue of ethnic census, that communities must conspire, this is part of what keeps Kenya down. And I say this with concern that, you know, while some of us feel confident that, you know, we're doing well, the fact is Kenya is bleeding and Kenya is a sleeping giant. Why do I say so? Korea, which 50, 60 years ago, we were giving aid. Today, Korea is giving us aid because it's all on the verge of being a developed country because of leadership. So we must acknowledge that while some people will take it that, oh, all is well, okay. I take the position it's not well. But there was also an important point that Professor was raising on how come our elections are so expensive? Let's talk about development and so on. Let's forget politics and all. While that may be true, I think there must also be acknowledgement of the fact that Jubilee has also done poorly in terms of governance. The fact that corruption has become order of day. And for me, this is where I see no difference between Jubilee and NASA. This is why I say Jubilee is the problem, but NASA not the solution. Because you go to Kilifi, you know, the same story that we have at the national level. There is the same concern of pilferage of public resources, even at that level. And you find NASA leadership go there to support the people who are culpable. So to that extent, we must address the issue of governance. Unless we contain corruption and ukabila, Kenya will remain what it is. Finally, in terms of, I would want to encourage leadership of Kenya now that President Kenyatta and Deputy President Ruto have been re-elected. Perhaps they could take cue from what China's leadership did. There is this big company called Huawei. It's today one of the world's leading telecom companies, if not the leading in certain segments of the telecom sector. There used to be a problem. Professor was also asking, why do we have to import ballot papers from another country while we have printing companies here in Kenya? What the leadership of China did at that time, I understand the leader, the founder of Huawei, went to the leadership. There was a case where 98% of their electronic gadgets were imported from somebody they didn't consider so friendly. So they said, look, why don't you just take a little bit of the money you spend for this 98%, let's develop our own R&D, research and development here in China. That's how Huawei today has become. The president said, regardless of what, 1% of the money we use to import these gadgets from outside. Kenya is spearheading M-Pesa, there is M-Kura, M-Vote. Why does the leadership say, look, we want our brand Kenya? Why don't we have M-Vote, M-Kura, which is homegrown, a homegrown solution, which the world can borrow again later from us? That's my challenge to the leadership.
All right, and the M-Vote, I think also Kenya, the diaspora actually were moving full steam ahead with the M-Vote. We don't know what really happened to it. Right? So we should actually ask the government squarely to actually do everything for the people, right? You have all that initiative. Right. Also, you got good brains as well, you as Dr. Shem Ochuodho, with the IT sector as well. Why can't you also spearhead and come up with a proposal for the government? Instead of raising accusatory fingers and saying, why? Why can't you now take action yourself?
Debarl, I'm not raising accusative finger. I think actually these are issues of mobile voting. About 3 years ago, when former chairman of IBC, Isaac, was still in power, our teams in Washington, D.C. did demonstrate there is a sister to M-Vote we call iVote for internet voting, secure voting. They did demonstrate to him. But the answer he gave was that this can never be used in Kenya because it's too transparent and too accurate. Now, there must be also a mindset shift, and I think Professor was talking about this earlier on. There must be trust, there must be a mindset shift.
So these are officials of IBC who are saying it is too transparent.
That was the then chairman of IBC actually saying that now that he's out of office, I can quote him.
Right, so you see the cloud of actually, this ominous cloud of doubt and mistrust that we are living in under as a country is actually what is really making the electoral management in this country very expensive.
That's true. I think we must address the issue of authenticity, the issue of trust, the issue of credibility and integrity.
Thank you very much. Peter Kagwanja, back to your article again, right? Because I think you said, we've looked at the first plank, the second plank is a permanent campaign as a data. I'll just put it up maybe for our viewers to see. You say that the permanent campaign as a data-heavy and media-led strategy that ODM adopted in 2014 to delegitimize the Jubilee regime and to win future elections. And you say that an oversized presence of ODM agenda in the media has polarized public opinion, created intense national anxiety and dampened spirits in Jubilee strongholds. So you think there is a deliberate attempt, especially by the media, and this is where we are reading from actually here, where it says the success so far of ODM's media-led permanent campaign machine is not in doubt. Asked why Odinga was not campaigning at the grassroots ahead of the August polls, one of his renowned communication strategists aptly remarked, "We are putting resources to better use. An oversized presence of ODM agenda in the media has polarized public opinion, created intense national anxiety, and dampened spirits in Jubilee strongholds."
Yeah, but Debarl, you can relate to that. If we are honest as Kenyans, I was sitting here with Raila Odinga in the evening, and it was the most acidic, acerbic, panel I've been in that evening. In fact, I was feeling, why did I come? At the end of it, President Kenyatta, or whoever tweeted for him, said, "This is why I don't watch political analysis." That was at 10 o'clock after that. And you can just imagine how I felt. That is it that I was participating in the wrong thing? You are aware of the decision by Jubilee at a certain point to pull out all its analysts. And I became the only person who would come to these meetings. And at one point, in their WhatsApp forum, I was laughed at as a fool because I came here, I am myself, and there are three on the other side. And I don't say they made a minced meat out of me, but I didn't come out very good because I was the sole opinion, and I have my quota of a minute. If you are allocating a minute. So let me answer your question straight.
But can I maybe just butt in a bit? Because I think also as a media, maybe other hosts may allude to the fact that it's been incredibly difficult to actually get hosts, or maybe not really hosts, guests from actually the Jubilee fraternity, right? This is not even maybe leading up towards the general election. Even when the Jubilee administration just came in, it's been extremely difficult. They will promise they will never show up. Then we'll have a panel that is full maybe of ODM or NASA, and then they will tweet and say this is a very balanced panel.
I'm not accusing the media per se.
But we're just trying to show, because I think the narrative that has been there is that, yes, most of the media houses are hosting ODM or NASA's fraternity and not giving a sporting chance to Jubilee administration as well. Right? So because this has been the case, and I think we've taken special umbrage with that, especially with their panelists. We follow them, they never really acknowledge the invite as well.
Debarl, now that you are pushing us to understand or to...
No, let him just clarify, because he was actually clarifying.
Let me come to it. But I just wanted to say this. You are telling us there is need for electoral reforms, there is need for a dialogue, and we agree. Don't you think also it's time for the media to think deeply of that concern from Jubilee?
Yeah, the point, Debarl, is I write for The Nation. I have been writing for Daily Nation and Sunday Nation from my second year at the university. And I have never stopped. Perhaps I'm one of the scholars who have had a permanent file for the last 20 or so years. Even when I was abroad, I used to run a whole column here. I respect this paper, I respect this media house. And I felt at sometimes that it was becoming a victim, and I wanted to study what victimhood this was. And a permanent campaign model, and I've been talking to my colleagues, it's not something, it's something in law, in political science, it is also something in political management. It was invented at Adajime Kata by Patrick Cadell, who is a professor there. And he said, in order to be relevant throughout, you have to use media, and you have to use media, and you have to use heavy data in order to legitimize yourself before the people. And in that case, from 2014, and I have said it in the article, NASA, or by that time ODM, in the context of COD, adopted the permanent campaign model, which is basically that you run a 24 media cycle, which is run by your war room, or whatever they call the strategy room, but it's normally called the war room, and you come up with the issue. And when things are not, you throw in a questionable data like, oh, Euroboard has cost Kenya $2 billion, and the government will be forced to respond, and that's a debate for 24. You manage that. And this, when Sally Muron was asked by somebody, this is a communication strategist I was asking about, why is Raila not going to the field to campaign like Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto? He said, we are putting our money to better use. And that game was short. And I wondered, what kind of good use is this money being put to? And then when you unearth the behavior and everything of the media, why, for example, media houses would collectively call on Kenyatta to show up 30 minutes after 7 days after he said he's not coming to the debate. That actually brought to the climax of that compromising of the media. And I am saying, not as a policy decision.
You cannot sit, maybe, and all my panelists will actually try and help me in Farah Maalim as well, because I don't want to give an opinion also, because I have interest also in media as well.
Yes.
But you cannot actually raise or accuse NASA because they have a better strategy on how to use the media.
Sure.
And the Jubilee administration have done a sucky job on trying to use the media as well. If they actually profile the issues that are raised, like the Eurobond, it is your honest to actually send experts to come and defend this.
I did not accuse the media. That's what I'm saying. How can I accuse the nation when they have given me a whole space like this to debate my friend George Kegoro, who speaks for the other side?
Thank you.
And I'm accused normally of speaking for this other. That's not what I'm saying. I am saying before and after August 8th, there was an oversized agenda of ODM in our debates. And I asked the question, why was this? And I answered the question, it is because NASA adopted a permanent campaign model. My conclusion, if you read it, I am telling President Uhuru Kenyatta that in order to avoid this situation, he also has to adopt a permanent campaign model, because he can never get a break to pursue his development agenda unless he deal with these side shows. And the side shows are about allegations of corruption. There might be real corruption.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a point. So it is not, I'm not really accusing the media.
So the Jubilee administration failed to come with a rejoinder to actually these accusations were being profiled by ODM.
I say this much, and I'm saying, and my conclusion, my policy recommendation is that if Jubilee is to have a 5 years, next 5 years in peace, they have to adopt what NASA adopted in 2014.
Right. Okay, let's hear from Farah. Thank you very much.
The stuff, whether you want to call it campaign, whatever you want to call it, media houses are not the producers of that. They package. And basically, but this is information or news that comes to the house. And the consumers are also the people. So the way you package yourself, the way you play your own media strategy is, and this is an adversarial political situation in which everybody wants to have the better of the other. Yeah. So don't blame these people who only package what you bring them. Blame yourselves for not being able to bring out what needs to be brought out in the best possible way. And that's basically, and I think pulling you out of, all of you out of that, is not, in my opinion, the same way we pulled out of the elections and you were happy and rejoicing. Pulling you out of that is not, in my opinion, the best way.
No, it was not.
The best way to deal with that. I mean, you don't run away from a problem, yeah? You don't run away from what is. But having said that, I think at the end of the day, we need to think a little bit or substantially outside that adversarial aspect. We need to come to a realization that we have a country that we jointly own. And as long as we have this discourse right now of engaging, of talking, of trying to win Kenyans on one position or the other, then we're safe. You should be worried when that stops and ceases. Then people will go now and seek another alternative route. And that alternative route is basically one direction we have never gone and we never want to go as a country. You see what I mean? So what they say, there's a very famous Nigerian professor who they call the professor of professors, basically constitutional law, who says if you eliminate peaceful ways of trying to change, peaceful democratic ways of trying to change the hands or the grabs on power, then you make it inevitable for them to look for alternatives. So I think because we have a country, as long as we are talking the way we are talking right now and we're engaging in the peaceful discussions, let's not get disturbed by that. Because the moment you hear nobody's talking, then you better know that there's a problem. People are looking in a different direction altogether. And that direction has messed all the countries that went in that direction. So I think we have a country to protect. And more than anything else, it's my sincere hope that we have a democracy that functions and works and performs, and that allows us also to have an impersonal way of politics. Impersonal in the sense that you're looking at the ideas, you're looking at this team who have these ideas and this team that has ideas, and basically you're not looking at this community and that community. Unless and until we strive in that direction and push it very hard, you see, we're getting very close, we're getting progressive to that. When you hear of secession, when you hear of exclusion, you see Ochuodho, with all the problems he has with NASA and the leadership of NASA for all these years, tells you that there are bigger problems there, and there is a problem of exclusion. Now, exclusion is there.
Thank you.
It's been there from time we got independence until now.
We are remaining with yes, very briefly.
Very briefly, but I want to just look at this nation on page 19.
Page 19.
This photo you see, Mheshimiwa Dirito, Mheshimiwa Wagui Gichere, and the women for Kirinyaga and Gathoni Muchomba. I was standing next to Gathoni Muchomba.
You're not making any use.
Yes, you see, the nation decided to cut that.
Okay,
so when we talk
page
of
is that? What page is that?
Page 19.
Page
when
19.
you start saying that media houses are not, they should also look at within themselves. Just like, I don't know why they chose. Not even that. Even mentioning that we attended is not there. And we were there with Moses Kuria even.
Page 19.
Page 19.
Okay, let me just
this photo was taken, and the guy who was taking, I was looking at him.
Okay,
there you are.
So
look for the original one.
But
tell us why you cut it. But what,
because of the space, you see now we have to put
for that reason
the caption here on the side.
Yes,
yeah, so you agree?
And not only that, he was not as newsworthy as the other three.
I agree, fine. That's okay. I have no problem with that explanation. But this is the more important point I wanted to drive. During that time, Debarl.
Yes.
No, this is very telling. If you look at even the stories, they mention what I wanted to bring out. I'm just using that as an example. That was yesterday. This is what I wanted to tell you. If you want to know, if you are a good basher of Trump, go to CNN.
Okay.
If you support Trump, go to Fox News.
All right, thank you.
In our country, can we avoid getting into that line? Because
but
our media
Honorable
houses,
Kioni, to justify this, just look at this.
I agree.
Women reps Thanksgiving service.
I agree.
Why would you put Honorable Kioni here?
And why is Honorable
he's a governor, maybe he's the one hosting this particular.
He's a governor.
He's a governor, surely.
He's a small president of the
That's okay. I am not complaining about, but I am trying to bring out the point.
Yes.
The media houses are not completely out of blame. Are you getting it?
Yes.
And I am trying to tell you, we in Jubilee, when you saw quite a number of people pulling out from the forums,
yes,
it's because we got to a point where we thought you're just going to help them bash you.
Thank you.
And that is why I'm saying again, the media house, just like we have to look back and look at our electoral processes and how we want to manage our elections and manage these losses that are coming our way, media houses, don't let it pass without yourself. Look at yourself inside.
Thank you.
There is a narrative out there that this media house supports this and that media house supports that, and is of no value for you to show up.
All right, Dr. Shem Ochuodho, as we are giving out,
yes,
very briefly.
In as much as I wanted to concur with Mheshimiwa Farah, improving the electoral systems, I'm glad actually NASA seems to have dropped even the other term, electoral fraud, which was even worse. But I think to say that the current structure is such that unless you are Jubilee, you can't win. I think we were told that in 2001, 2002, that unless you are KANU, you can't win. If NASA failed to have a good enough strategy to win the election, let's not blame it on our laws. Because my premise is that to beat the incumbent, you must have such a wide gap that even factoring in some of that rigging, you still win. That's what we did in 2002. But more importantly, and with a light touch on the media, I think I would not take the advice of good professor here that Jubilee should also, to be peaceful, that they should do what NASA is doing. I think some of that is already doing. What did we see on Tuesday, the swearing in of the president? Jubilee, I think, perhaps hired all live streaming for the main media. So NASA could do whatever they were doing, but of course media had to, I saw all media were beaming it live. So whether they were involved in that or it was accidental, I don't know. But I thought it was a good strategy. But having said that, what really should be the Jubilee's goal? I have to confess, I have only read cursorily its manifesto. And I'm glad that Jubilee is the only coalition that mentions diaspora in it. NASA's manifesto has no single word diaspora at all. But Jubilee, is the goal just to rule peacefully, or the goal is to make us have a great Kenya? If the goal is to make us a great Kenya, let's not go the route of propaganda.
All right, thank you. And of course, this week you have a diaspora meeting happening from Wednesday. Just tell us very briefly about it.
Yes,
very briefly.
Meeting on Strathmore Friday to Saturday. It's an event co-organized in partnership with the Strathmore and a number of banks, the Kenya, KEPSA, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and we have the AFADB regional director as the chief guest. We have eminent actors, both from Kenyans that are coming back home, as well as a former Korean minister, outgoing Ghanaian trade minister, and a host of others. And we welcome Kenyans to engage with diaspora, because the good thing is diaspora seems to be putting a smile on the face of Kenya, even when there is all gloom. Even when some people thought we were in trouble, we still went ahead to organize.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, we have to wind up all this, not because my director, she's actually on my case. I really do appreciate this particular debate. Yes. And we hope, yes, the course that we are trying to actually achieve also when we have this conversation is not just to fight, but actually to have a very constructive discussion on how we can take this country forward and not just being embroiled in political quagmire and crises that we've seen. But we want to appreciate your input this morning, waking up this morning, also to come and tell Kenyans where we are at this morning. Tomorrow also will be a big day, Jamhuri Day. Let's see how that will be panning out. We'll cover that live for you, of course, from Uhuru Park as well. Thank you very much for your valued company. We really do appreciate also your input on Facebook and see rush of tweets. We are actually stuck for time, but I promise you next time we'll be reading most of them. Thank you for your valued company. I'm Debarl Inea.